हमारे साथ यहाँ पे Nadhra Shahbaz and her panel. We introduce it. Nadhra Shahbaz is an art professor here at Comes and has a lot of experience in our team, directly and indirectly. She's informed the Mela with us and couldn't have found a better moderator for this panel. This is kind of like the climax of the entire Mela. So I hope कि आप लोग benefit करें इससे और पसंद करें इसका content. So over to
very kind of you. Assalamualaikum. बहुत शुक्रिया रणवीर for your kind words. And others, yeah. Assalamualaikum. बहुत शुक्रिया रणवीर का for her kind words, and it gives me great pleasure to be here today as a moderator with our great panelists who are doyens of the intellectual capital of Pakistan. We will be asking some very interesting questions that are related to our identity formation, questions that have a resonance in them in terms of how do we deal with our present day, and how do we go forward. Let me first introduce our panelists, and then I will say a few words about what I understand and the questions that boggle my mind, and then hand it over to our panelists. We have here with us Raza Kazim Sahab. He's a lawyer, founder and director of Sanjan Nagar Institute of Philosophy and Art, working on evolutionary methodology. And his institute is a laboratory for testing and developing ideas and concepts in a variety of fields, including philosophy, musicology, audio and sound engineering, musical instrument making, and photography. He also started Sanjan Nagar Public Education Trust, SNPET, that runs a free school for girls in a working class area. Salman Rashid Sahab is a Rashid. S-H-I-D, Rashid. Salman Rashid Sahab is a travel writer, fellow of Royal Geographical Society, is the author of 9 travel books. He's the only Pakistani to have seen the north face of K2 and trekked in the shadow of this great mountain. His work, explorations, history and travel writings appear in almost all leading publications. Kamil Mumtaz Sahab is a lawyer, founder and is the architect, an architectural historian, has been raising standards of architecture in the country for the past 40 years. He's also an educator and pioneered the movement for the conservation of architectural heritage, and has been running a widely successful practice of his own since 1985. Yousuf Bashir Sahab is a designer, founder of Commune Artist Colony, is a resident professor at Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture in Karachi. His Commune Artist Colony works for the promotion of visual and performing arts and the strengthening of the artist community. And coming back to our question of identity formations, I would like to take the framework of Stuart Hall, in whose opinion identities are never unified, and in late modern times increasingly fragmented and fractured, never singular but multiply constructed across different, often intersecting and antagonistic discourses, practices and positions. They're subject to a radical historicization and are constantly in the process of change and transformation. We need to situate the debates about identity within all those historically specific developments and practices which have disturbed the relatively settled character of many populations and cultures. Above all, in relation to the processes of globalization, which are coterminous with modernity, and the processes of forced and free migrations which have become a global phenomenon of the so-called post-colonial world. And in Homi Bhabha's opinion, we have entered an anxious age of identity in which the attempt to memorialize lost time and to reclaim lost territories creates a culture of disparate interest groups, of social movements. We need to negotiate the recurrence of the image of the past while keeping open the question of the future. To reinscribe the past, reactivate it, relocate it, and re-signify it as it commits our understanding of the past and our reinterpretation of the future to an ethic of survival that allows us to work through the present. So how do we conceptualize identity? What are the internal cognitive capacities? The questions of not only building an identity, but more importantly, how to preserve it. The fear of fluid boundaries is always there between identity, preservation, self-love, or narcissism. The redefinitions of claims to race and ethnicity, as well as identity in the global culture, ambivalence of issues of identity. What takes precedence, personal or national? With that, I will request Raza Kazim to kindly
well, I think this is what you've heard really says it all, really sums up the issue and the direction in which human endeavor today was to pursue the question of identity. Now, I hope that we all share the question that is posed. All people who are living in these times have experienced the issue and the problem of identity. My feeling is that the issue has not been artificially formulated by the conveners of this meeting, but they focused upon an existing question, which in different ways we all face. I do not know if that is right, mistaken. I would be very happy to have interventions and interjections from all of you, where you feel that I would not like you to listen to me in silence, because that will be no guide to me whether I'm talking sense or nonsense. So I will seek your intervention. But I'll share with you very briefly how I understand the issue of identity and how I have dealt with it in my own life. I think my reason for mentioning my life is the fact that it has been so long. I'm in my 87th year. So I hope that gives me empirical basis for addressing the question of identity. In my time, identity to me is something like the steering wheel in an automobile. It is that an operating identity, a living identity, a dynamic identity. These are these features of a living process, and in those, in that sense, probably identity has to be that which guides the individual and drives the individual. Not only guides it, but drives it, and not only drives it, but sustains it throughout the lifespan. If that is not an identity, then look, outside my office, I have a signboard. Now, surely that is not identity. The appearance that I may impart, either through my signboard or my face, or my few words, that should, may be sufficient for the other people around me to form an impression of me. But an impression is not an identity. Identity is what the individual produces himself. Identity, by definition, can't be imposed. Political leaders can't impose identity. They can only make an attempt to generate a common identity. the extent to which they succeed, not in the election, but in the social formation, in the formation of society during their time. To that extent, yes, they are relevant to the issue of identity. But I think the fundamental, the primary situation of the identity, human identity, is the individual. So this, I believe this is an invitation, this invitation to us as individuals to address the question. And perhaps the assumption is that most of us do not positively address the question of our identity and allow their environment, their circumstances to drive them in different directions, in different ways through the journey of life. So that is then, yes, a life spent, but it is not a life spent on the basis and for the sake of an identity which the individual has decided upon. I believe that on the day of judgment we will have to answer individually for the identities that we have lived and made for ourselves. So I think that is the importance of this issue. I do not know if I should take more time in saying, do you think I've used up my time?
We can actually,
Yes.
we'll come back.
Yes, definitely.
Salman Rashid.
I'm not going to be even half as philosophical as Raza Kazim sahab, but I'll use a phrase he used, which was artificial identity. And as a reader of classical geography and history, I have come to realize that first of all, can you please raise your hands, all those who have motor vehicles with an Al Pakistan registration plate?
Oh, we have
Al
one.
Pakistan.
We have two.
There must be more. There are 2 truthful people and a few liars here. From a member of Al Pakistan, you see, that's our identity crisis. We don't know what we are. Because, and I'm going to be brutal, because with the creation of Pakistan and the invention of the name Pakistan, if I carry on, I'll go on for about 200 hours, but I'll just say that with the invention of the name Pakistan, we messed up what little identity the Muslims of this subcontinent had earlier. You see, had our founding fathers known what, had read classical geography, they would have known that they did not need to invent a name for this country that they were on their way to creating. हमें बताया गया कि जी पे से पाकिस्तान, अलिफ से अफगानिया और काफ से कश्मीर और ये इस किस्म की बातें, तो बंगाल किधर गया था भाई? बंगाल भी था या किसी को पहले से वही आ चुकी थी कि बंगाल में तो वैसे ही 15-16 साल में अलहदा हो जाना है? तो ये एक पैलिम्सेस्ट हमारी जो क्लासिकल हिस्ट्री थी उसके ऊपर, क्लासिकल ज्योग्राफी के ऊपर चेपा लगा दिया गया एक फर्जी दास्तान का. जो नाम इंडिया है, the name India comes from Sindhu. From classical Sanskrit, when the word Sindhu goes to the Avestan of ancient Persia, it becomes Hindu. And Hindu was never a religious term until very recently. And the land of Hindu was, of the Hindu river was Hindustan. The Greeks turned it into Hindu by dropping the initial H and appending an S to it, which became Indus, and the country was India. The Indus flows on what is now Pakistan. This is India. If our founding fathers had known this one historical fact, a geographical fact, they would not have invented a new name, they would not have attempted to invent a new identity for a very ancient lot of people. That is where we went wrong. That is why we have Al Pakistan number registration plates. That is why We all pretend to have come from Arabia. कोई है जो कि कहे कि मैं इस धरती के का पूत हूँ 4000 साल से? Sir, you're wrong. आप भी अरब से आए हैं. I've seen Rajputs, Gujars, Jats, everyone claiming to have come from Arabia with the army of Muhammad bin Qasim, as if there were no Arabs to fight this war for them. So we have a major identity crisis, and
So we're here to set it right, or at least,
yes.
start picking up strands that we can weave into our
I've just said
take
that-
us through future.
yeah.
Kamil's out.
Thank you. Obviously, the topic this afternoon is a highly charged topic, and it's very understandable that people get emotional or else wax romantic and become sentimental when it comes to the question of identity. So I would like to, at the outset, just place a few simple markers to try and keep the discourse within some grounds of rationality and common sense. The topic, of course, is the problematization, format, something about identity. So first of all, the question, as we're given, who are we? Well, the first thing I think we need to clarify, when we talk of who, there's a very common response where people identify themselves in terms of where they live and what they own, where they're located. So it's really defined in terms of what I am. And I think we should keep in mind, first of all, the basic fundamental question, who are we? And who is not an object, it's not a thing. Who implies a person. And I'll come back to what that means, but I think that's a fundamental and basic definition and understanding to keep in mind through this debate. Secondly, identity, as has already been suggested in the opening remarks, is a complex, multi-layered thing. But essentially, to define anything or anyone, we have to take into account a larger, inclusive identity, a genre or species to which a thing belongs. And then there is the exclusive identity, the characteristics that distinguish that particular object or person from the larger generic group. And then in between, and that's where the complexities come in, is the relationship between the inclusive identity, which is as true as the exclusive identities. And the question really is how we relate the exclusive characteristics to the inclusive concepts. Where do we locate ourselves in relation to the other? In time, in space. Then, very simply, how are identities formed? Well, to begin with, there is the objective fact. There is somebody, some group, some person about which an identity is formed by another or by the person himself. Questions like who, where, when, who is the person, where is it located, what is the world. So the objective reality is, of course, the point of departure that we must have in view. And then there is the perception of that objective reality. And this is where complexities and diversities arise, because every subject, every observer has a different perception of the same thing. And then finally the formation of the identity itself is not my clothes, the language I speak, the place I live in. It's a concept. It's not a physical, material, tangible object or characteristic. It is a concept that we form within ourselves, of ourselves. That's a self-identity, or the concepts that we form of somebody other than us. So, in short, what I'm saying is that the question, who are we, ultimately depends on who we are. It's a roundabout thing. Who we are is defined differently according to what we believe is the world, the objective world. What we believe, in other words, it's defined by the world view that we hold. So pre-modern tradition, its society would define who we are very differently from a modern person in the modern world. And this is precisely because of the different understandings of what is the world. The pre-modern concept of reality has been layered, hierarchical, multiple, that the physical material reality is but one and the lowest level, and that there are higher domains or dimensions of reality with a creator. So that's a traditional worldview. And in that, one would define who we are in that framework. As opposed to that, modern man had settled the question of mind and matter and said, well, let's deal with what we can observe, touch, it's tangible, we can measure, calculate. So the physical material world is what is real, and the rest is all in the mind. So this bifurcation. And in that worldview, who we are, the answer is very different. Then it is located in the material, physical, temporal dimensions. And then, of course, we have the post-industrial, the post-modern worldview, which denies both the higher realities as well as the horizontal level by denying the very existence of any absolute truth. What then remains is purely plural, relativistic, subjective. My reality is my reality. So I defined who I am inside of me. It's a subjective definition. The world is, I can reinvent, imagine what world, so myself, I can reinvent myself. This kind of a statement would not have been possible before postmodernist philosophy. Who then are we? Simple answer is, in the inclusive sense, we are human. What does that mean? What is the distinctive characteristic or quality of being human? One is cognition and the other is volition. The capacity to be aware not only of our environment but of ourselves. And the freedom to act, to choose. This is what defines us as humans. But more than that is discernment, not just cognition, not just awareness, but the capacity to discern between right and wrong, between what is good and what is not good. So a moral dimension which has to be recognized as being specifically unique to humans. And it is this moral capacity, the discernment of virtue, which is essential to be truly human, to apply the discernment in our practice. That is wisdom. More than just knowledge, information. Wisdom is the capacity to discern and to apply discernment in our practice. And it is this very wisdom that we have dispensed with in the postmodern age. So what we will do.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. First of all, I just want to thank Lums and the organizers here for inviting me and sharing the stage with people who have looked up to and their works, like Raza Sahib. It's an honor for me to share the same stage with them. I mean, definitely not as experienced as him, not as learned as him, but experiences like this, make me understand, where I've come from, who am I, or yahan bhi, we started with, three basic discussions here, the philosophy of who we are, and then, the identity. Yes, we've been told our history wrong. We've been patronizing things that we should not be patronizing. But these recourses happen in life. We cannot blame, what had happened in the past today. We can correct it. We should correct it. But every day is a different day. Every day we change. Every day we think differently. Every day we look at our intentions because they also change. That helps us identify who we are. Then we talked about, who we are. I mean, to me, I'm not well read. I haven't done no masters. But, just my experiences. I'm just going to talk from my experiences, what I've learned through what's life has given me. And it's been amazing. It's an amazing journey, which I'm still on. And it's, for me, it's more than we, it's me. Who am I? What is my purpose? And why do I look like this? This was, I was very young when my father told me, Yousuf, you're not serious about your life. And I told him, I'm extremely serious about my life. It's my last vacation. And I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to do what I desire doing, and I need to find out what my desires are. It was a very stressful childhood, and I'm sure a lot of you have experienced it, because if my percentage wasn't 80%, I couldn't get into engineering or medical. So then what was left for me at that time was maybe commerce, and wasn't looked at very that is okay, pata nahi is bechare ka future kya hoga. It was a very stressful time when a child, you put him on, you need to do this, and you need to become. What it does is, humans have made these institutes. Institute of morality, start calling it religion. Institute of health, we call it hospital. Institute of knowledge, we call it schools, college, universities. Institute of security is police, army, governments. Man made these institutes to institutionalize man. And this word institutionalize, who goes into an institute? We go into an institute to become a product, and we come out as a product. I do not want to agree to that. God made me. He hand-wrote my story. I'm handwritten by Him. Nobody else has a story like mine. Each one of you. And each story, you have the choice to be whoever you want to be, depending on your actions. But for that, you have to understand, are your actions yours? Are they influenced by the environment? Is that really you? Or is this something that you've become? And it will only come, for me, again, I'm just talking about myself because this is all I know. For me, the most important thing was not to lie to myself. And that was the hardest thing coming out of me. All my life, because every time I turned around, I was something that someone made me. And I did not want to settle for that. I didn't want to settle for second best. So it was, again, this, and it's God-made. We all are God-made. It's going to take a lifetime to discover ourselves. So the journey is not ended. For me, it's just the start. It is just the tip of the iceberg. And the deeper I go, the painful it gets. Because all the answers are inside, I feel. All the questions are outside, but the answers are inside. And we're so afraid to ask ourselves. Because, sometimes you look at yourself in the mirror and, you really don't like the person that you are. It brings you shame. We need to identify everything. And so far in my 45 years of life, what I have discovered is one thing. Is what is the purpose? What is my purpose here? Through that purpose I identify. And the purpose is to find my strengths. I'm God-made, so He did not make me with any weaknesses. The things that we call weaknesses are not our weaknesses. Those are our strengths that we don't pay attention to. Like your health, it's your strength. You don't pay attention to it, it becomes your weakness. Same as your business. Same as your relationships. So we need to find our strengths, but the equation does not end there. And from those, people need to benefit. And that makes the purpose of life. So find out what your strengths are. Whatever you, so far, whatever I've fantasized about and worked towards, no problem. And for me, it is just still every day. Every day my niyat changes. Every day I have to check my intentions. Every step that I take, I need to ask myself why. Is it my step or is someone's holding my hand? And we grew up, the thing is, we've been told lies from a very young age. Very young age. And I tell this to my mother and she gets really upset. I said, Mom, you love me the most, but you're the first person who lied to me. She said, "Maine tumse kab jhoot bola?" And she said, "Bhau aa jayega." For all my life, I was scared of this bhau, and the bhau never came. And it started from there, I think. And then we were mind-washed, brainwashed. All of a sudden, we used to say Khuda Hafiz, all of a sudden it was Allah Hafiz. And all these things happen, We were never told about the love of God. We were only told to fear. We were introduced God through fear and greed. You do this, you go to heaven. In heaven there will be 70, 72 people fighting about them. And nobody said the love of God. Yes. And when I say, it is a beautiful fantasy, faith. People get really, really offended. How come you say something like that? It is. Faith is beautiful, but faith is fantasy. It is the ultimate love. And we're all born to love with this. We need to fall in love with this fantasy. This fantasy of our maker we haven't seen, we haven't touched. But if you concentrate, you will feel. It has to be felt. And that will be an understanding for you also. About yourself. And Iqbal sums it beautifully. जब इश्क सिखाता है आदाब खुदागारी खुलते हैं गुलामों असरार शहंशाह.
Going a little further on the same note, on Iqbal's poetry, I will read out a poem he has, and we'll try to translate it in a free translation, of course. I don't have the authentic translation. And then I will invite my panelists to ease their brain with that question. Munkar-e haq, nisf-e mulla, kafir ast. One who denies haq, the divine, to the religious scholar is a kafir, is a denier, is in denial. And the second line is Munkar-e khud, nisb-e man, kafir tarast. And one who denies the self is the worst of them all. So the parallels that are drawn here with the mullah and the man, the authority that is assigned to pass judgment, and the khudi ka concept, of course, Iqbal ki khudi ko kar buland itna, कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रज़ा क्या है. So what happened to our khudi? How far do we go back in time to pick those threads up? What happened to us in our colonial times, where our own self was separated from us? Our own self became the other. What happened to it? When did it happen? How do we undo it? This othering of ourselves, this idea of not associating anything positive with whatever is ours, negating the ownership. When will we start owning ourselves? When will we start owning what is ours? When we start thinking of belonging to this region, to this area, and not doing what Al-Pakistan means for us. So, over to you.
I have the advantage of listening to my colleagues and to my moderator, who's really set the tone. And obviously, I think our hosts are the innovation, social innovation lab. Is that right? And the question is, who are we? So, social innovation standpoint. So obviously, they're looking for generating or building up an identity, which I understand that my hosts feel that there's not enough of that identity. I'm completely with them, in agreement with them, that of course we don't have sufficient identity. Look at the time, because identity on a larger scale, on a social scale, is a product of history, not the product of an individual. Iqbal was a great individual, Qaid-e-Azam was a great individual. Now, these are person we can refer to as our own. But they have not shaped our identity, the present identity. I'm sure that you agree that Quaid-e-Azam's identity, whatever we see it as from a remote distance, and Iqbal, we know them very well, roughly what they are, but our own identity, existing identity, is not there, and hence the need for social innovation. And on that direction, the first thing that they're focusing on is our identity. But again, I feel that I have to not defer, but I have to point out a feature that when you pose the question of identity in the collective dimension, who are we? And there's social innovation, which is your motivation. So then you are addressing the collective identity, or if I may say so, a national identity. Well, there's one thing that is clear, that the question is being raised because we generally feel that there is not enough of it. We generally believe that we have a problem with having a crystallized and valid social identity. I think that that is the context of the issue. Of course, it's a very important issue. Now, look, an existing social identity, becomes a part of history. And as we all know, that history keeps turning a page. It is never made up one page. So when this page is turned, the times that we're living through, you cannot take it for granted. You cannot believe that this will be perpetual. We all know our past, and we know that pages have been turning throughout. And this one certainly deserves to be turned. And when it is turned, then the historians, those who will look at the facts of our contemporary reality, they will then tell us what identity we had. The question, the challenge that is being posed today is that can we today now remake that identity? Well, that's a pioneering job. That's a major job. That is a job that has to be of a greater magnitude than Iqbal was or Quaid-e-Azam was, for the short, simple reason that what they left behind was not a sufficient legacy to shape a crystallized identity, so that we wouldn't have to raise the question, who are we? I'm submitting that this really boils down to the individuals, like Quaid-e-Azam, like Iqbal in their times. You need to produce from the womb of the present men who will serve individuals. Of course, Quaid-e-Azam had a group, so did Iqbal. So of course men function not merely as individuals, but individuals are the atoms of which the molecules are made. So I'm passing the onus on that note to all of us as individuals. I feel that the individual is not sufficiently engaging with the issue of our identity or what the verdict of tomorrow will be upon our identity. I think all of us have that lurking feeling that it will not be a very positive verdict that will be delivered upon our existing identity or lack of it. And I think this is the issue that the Innovation Lab is addressing. My plea to them is that to produce the individuals who will be the atoms of which the molecule of identity will be made.
I have no doubt about my identity. I am a Hindu, if you please, in Persian, and I am a Sindhu in Sanskrit, because I am a child of the Sindhu river. And for 4,000 years, the time when my ancestors arrived on this land, I have been a Sindhu or a Hindu, as the Persians used to call me. But, my consciousness of identity is informed by my reading of history and classical or ancient geography. The problem that I see around me is that we are 200 million plus people in this country, and I think only 2,000 people read English. Jinka muhavara अंग्रेजी है, who read English for the pleasure of it. And because knowledge only exists in English, sadly, so we are a largely uninformed people. We don't know where we came from, and we therefore do not know where we are headed. That's why we have all Pakistan registration plates, please. You see, we made a mistake in the past, but the government is never going to rectify it, and we have the sickness in our minds that the government must do everything. I think it is upon ourselves to start teaching ourselves, to make ourselves conscious of what we are, to be proud of Mohenjo-daro or Harappa or Taxila, and to be proud of Raja Porva. The way, if any one of you had ever read history, you would have known how great a man Raja Porva was, what sort of a character he had. Greek writers tell you that Darius, who was fighting against Alexander, was actually never fighting. In the 3 battles that he faced Alexander, he bolted even before Alexander came within 500 meters of him. He never stood to fight. The Persians, the Iranians, even today are proud of Darius. And they vilify Alexander. We, on the other hand, so insecure and so uninformed of our reality, lionize Alexander and vilify Raja Porva, Hota Hindusi. So you have to forget about the government, forget about the mistakes of the past, become conscious of what you are, learn your history, and be proud of what you are.
If I can refer to the share, the couplet quoted by Nadhra. First of all, the question of haqq, munkar-e haqq. The truth is, ana al-haqq. Crucify me for that.
Yes. Very well. We're all crucify us all.
The truth is, we are humans. The problem is khudi. There was no problem with ana. I am the truth. There is nothing except the truth. The problem arises when we imagine that we are something, other than the truth. Then we have to say, what then am I? And this has been answered very simply in, again, I go back to pre-modern societies. An outsider would come and ask the question, who are you not? And they would say, we are the people. And a lot of place names actually translate to the land of the people in the local language, because they knew who we were, the people who live in these parts. Who are the people of the Hindu That's the Hindus. We are the Hindus. There's no confusion there. And then, of course, one identified oneself with one's people who spoke the same language. The others were dummies. They don't know how to speak. We're the people, and this is the language, and this is the land, and we are at the center of our world. There's absolutely no confusion. And then along comes a new concept of the nation. This was an artificial construct, if ever there was one. And now we have to work out which nation are we? Where does this idea come from? Your problem with Pakistan? Pakistan was the problem. This was a modernist project. The very idea of nation states is a modern idea. And we saw the modern world, the European conquerors conquered us, and we were dumbstruck. What happened to us? Oh, this is modernism, and part of it is the nation state. So you have to be modern. You have to become a nation state. So we said, okay, we become a nation state. Now, but which nation are we?
What are our characteristic features? How do we identify us?
So the whole plethora opens out.
Again, the topic of haq, anal haq. है अनल हक हक पर कहनी न थी, है अनल हक हक पर कहनी न थी, यार की महफिल से बाहर यार की महफिल की बात. तो ये सिंपल सी चीज़ थी, और उन लोगों के सामने जिनको नहीं समझा उनसे इंसान क्या सर टकराए. और बिफोर नेशन हम लोग ह्यूमन, खुदा ने किसी गोरे को हमसे कम मोहब्बत से नहीं बनाया, या मिट्टी बच गई थी तो उसने बोला मैं कोई चाइनीज पैदा कर दूं, ऐसा नहीं था. Find everyone, he wrote each one's story. We need to get out of this nations rut because it's a false thing. अब बहुत हम लोगों ने इतना nation करके divide कर दिया. These nations were made, these languages were created so that we could communicate, so that we could identify, not differentiate. अब इतना तोड़, किसी को जबान के नाम पे तोड़ा, किसी को धर्म के नाम पे तोड़ा, किसी को रिलीजन के नाम पे तोड़ा. अब तो जुड़ने का टाइम है. We need to, yes, we need to learn from history. But the only problem we learn from history is that we learn nothing from history. And the change is permanent. We have to grow out of these boundaries. And this whole world is my mother. These different governments have, ये ठेकेदार हैं. They're contractors of visas. That's how I see them. I go anywhere in the world, I look different, I talk different. But all I want is respect. And the only way it's going to come is when I give. Money can't buy, power can't resolve. It only comes through giving. And we need to get out of this, I feel. Again, what I say is, what I've experienced. To find myself, through me, someone benefits. There was some amazing thing that happened in Brazil. I'm proud of it too, because it's my land. This is my mother. God created this whole world for me, ताकि मैं तस्खीर करूं. मुख्तलिफ लोग बनाए, everyone looked like me. How would I identify people? They look different, so I can identify. Yes, we are raised with prejudices. When I went to America, I was always warned, there'll be racism against you there. People like you, you're going to the Midwest, so there'll be racism against you. Not understanding that I was the most racist person. When I went from there, everyone told me, "Koi kala nazar aaye to jeta se maar dena." We could not. So I was raised racist, and I need to. And this is, it's going to be my effort because I'm responsible for my actions. So I need to change, and I feel the change would come when I identify my problems and my strengths. और हक तो हक ही रहेगा, हक हक रहेगा। दुनिया के किसी कोने में कोई इंसान और अपने उसको उसी मोहब्बत से बनाए जिस मोहब्बत से मुझे बनाया। जब हम लोगों ने फिरके जो बने थे, सारी चीजें, जब हमारा मुल्क अलग हुआ, टूटा, अभी बहुत नुकसान हो गया ना। अब हम लोग सारी चीजें, सारे मुल्क किस तरह हम लोग जोड़े? How can everyone benefit from us? I tell this to everyone, when I was born, each one of us, God's promise, born a king. There was celebration, mithaiyan bati, people called, the day we were born. And inshallah, the day we die, it's going to be another celebration. There'll be roses, there'll be ittar, people will weep, there'll be food, like a king. The time we're supposed to live like one. We get ourselves into this rut of trying to identify ourselves with others. You are an individual, born a king by God Mighty Himself. The story written by Him. So now it's time to unite. बहुत लड़ लिए, बहुत टूट गए ना. And we should learn from our history. We should learn from history कि जब भी हमने एक दूसरे से अलग हुए, सब कुछ टूट गया. हम लोगों को क्या ढूंढ रहे हो? खुद ढूंढो ना. जवाब अंदर, सवाल बाहर.
Going back to what Kamil Saab said on people and places, let me recite something from Bulle Shah. In the 17th and 18th century, he was asking similar questions, very similar to what we are debating today. But then he was also negating a lot of association with different lands. What was he trying to say? Let's find that out and let's ask our panelists to talk about it. When he says, Bulla ki jana mein kaun hai? Na main Arabi, na Lahori, na main Hindi shahar Nagori, na Hindu, na Turk Peshawari, ना मैं रहंदा विच नदान, बुल्ला की जाना मैं कौन, अव्वल आखिर आप नो जाना, ना कोई दूजा होर पछाना, मैं थो ना कोई होर से आना, बुल्ला शाह खड़ा है कौन, बुल्ला की जाना मैं कौन. So this khudi, the khud, the self, the recognition of the self, what does it mean? Where can it take us? We have to ask these questions to deal with the future. And I ask my panelists to enlighten us.
Well, I completely agree with what my moderator has said and what she's read out. The question is that you have to know yourself. And that is what Bulle said, that is what Shahbaz said. But the question is that when that question arises today, then you have to address it in the light of the knowledge and the access to knowledge that you have today, knowledge of facts, of realities. Surely time has moved on. I believe that the scientific and technological revolution is dated in 1960. That is when it originated, when genes were discovered, when the Big Bang was discovered, and when the computer age came into being. And since then, as we all know, the scientific and technological revolution has gone on informing us. There's been also a lot of information about man, his mental processes and the nature of those, his motivations and his emotional processes. Now, if you were going to ask that question, and if you were going to, if you were going to share with that one the importance of knowing yourself, which is Khudi, then you will have to address it in your time, on your knowledge platform, and your labor input in accessing that knowledge platform, and then asking these questions, which Bulle Shah raised and which Iqbal raised, and which is being raised now by the innovation, social innovation lab, then you will have to address these questions, not in just hyperbole, not in adjectives, but you will have to address relevant existing knowledge platform, relevant to man's understanding of himself. After all, can there be any khudi without understanding what the human processes are objectively as natural products? I don't find sufficient investment on the part of our intelligentsia in this endeavor. I would suggest, make bold to suggest, that if a Gallup poll were to be held of the intelligentsia, the educated middle class at least, and they were given an option to freely and practically move out of Pakistan to Canada or America or to somewhere else. My experience, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the overwhelming majority would exercise the option of leaving this country. So, I mean, the trend, the existing trend is not to know yourself, and certainly not to know yourself in the light of positive knowledge, discovered knowledge. So I hope that the Social Innovation Lab will innovate a trend for people to undertake the responsibility of knowing themselves in this day and age. Because you've got to live for your tomorrow. You've got to work in your tomorrow. You and I are what we decide and what we do. It is our doing which is the ultimate source of our identity. I think that's enough.
I'm a great fan of Bulle Shah's, but unfortunately Bulle Shah also had not read classical geography. he had to ask Ki Jana Main Kaun. I have no doubt about myself, and the bottom line is that you have to keep your mind open, you have to read and understand who you are, where you come from, and even if I'm a Mochi or a Nai or a Teli, I'm proud of it because my ancestors have been that way for a few hundred years. I don't invent stories about being an Arab because I know several people from my clan who have had their DNA genetic testing done have learned that they are not Arabs. I was told I should get one too, and I said I don't need to because I know who I am. I don't have to pretend to be an Arab. So and what liberates me is that I've read my history and I've read my geography, and that leaves no doubt in my mind.
I would like to clarify a very basic point here, which is resurfaced now in the second poet we just heard. Both Iqbal and Bulle Shah talking about the self. We must understand that they are referring to two kinds of self. One is the lesser self, which is the only self for modern man. And when Bulle Shah says, I am not Lahori or Peshawari or this or that, he means the Zahir, the visible, apparent me. मैं कौन? आपसे अगर मैं पूछूं मैं कौन, क्या कहेंगे आप? ये बंदा जो यहाँ बैठा हुआ है, क्या नजर आ रहा है आपको? ये जिल्द, ये बाल, ये कपड़े, ये मैं हूं? ये तो मैं नहीं। मैं कौन हूं? ये बंदा जो बोल रहा है, ये क्या बोल रहा है? ये आवाज क्या है? These are just vibrations of air particles. That's not me. मैं कौन हूँ? You can't see me. I can't see me. Who am I? What you see is a manifestation of the person that no doubt exists. I am manifested by this mass that occupies this space, that reflects this light, that emits these sounds. This is not me. These are the outward signs that manifest my existence. Who then am I? As I said before, my self is characterized by the fact I know that I am. This knowing is I am the one who knows. But what is knowing? Am I knowing? I am not knowing. By knowing, I am manifesting the knower. So if you really question within yourself, deeply contemplate on the question, मैं कौन हूँ? You do come to the conclusion, I am not. I merely manifest the truth. The higher self is all that is. He jana mein kaun. Please understand this distinction before entering into this debate regarding khudi, haq.
That's it.
So, there were a couple of talks here. One was just in this recent discussion. Yes, a lot of people want to leave this country. You ask anyone, and they want to go. And I think they should go also. The purpose needs to be understood. If you want to go to learn, go. If you want to go to earn, I think it's no point. क्योंकि again, बुल्ले शाह से, वेक बंदिया, आसमाना जोड़ दे पंछी, वेक तो सही की कर दें, नाव कर दे रिस ज़ख़ीरा, नाव भुखे मर दें, कभी किसी ने उड़ दे पंछी भुखे मर दे वेखे ने, बंदे कर दे रिस ज़ख़ीरा, बंदे भुखे मर दे. तो yes, you want to go learn, China तक जाएं, चलो चीन. But if your purpose is to earn, you'll make the same amount wherever you go. तो तुम्हारे नसीब का कोई नहीं ले सकता, जो नहीं हो कोई दे नहीं सकता. And secondly, yes, initially it really bothered me, this identity. Every time I saw a billboard, it said in English, Dil chahta hai Pepsi piyo. And it really failed, I said, something, they're taking away my culture, they're taking away my language. My kids can't read Urdu, they can't understand it. This is it. This is the end of me. But I said, wait a minute. Language was created to communicate. If this is the new form of communication, why not accept it? Why fear? Urdu was the language of the caravan also. People who spoke Sanskrit could have said, or Turkish could have said, oh my God, this is the end of our language. This new language is taken over. But it was there to communicate. It was there to unite. So if the change is positive, accept it. Learn from our mistakes. Read our history. But again, what my ancestors were, I am not that man. If Raja Dahir was my ancestor, I am not Raja Dahir anymore. become over years, developed. So yes, that was our ancestral history we should know, because we will learn from that. We will learn what our traits have been, because it's still in our DNA. But again, today, what do I do today? I mean, does it help me find my origin to become a better man? Yes, find my origin. You know, I was raised, my mother was from Ajmer and my father was a Punjabi. I was raised in a very Punjabi environment, and they said, you know, Punjabi to bade diler hote hain. हाँ यू मेरे को पठान बोलो पठान बहुत ज़्यादा दिलेर होते हैं मेरे को बोलो वो बहुत ज़्यादा दिलेर होते हैं मेरे को सारे दिलेर होते थे और बुज़दिल कौन था So everyone just glorified their own selves just to make them feel better. You go back any history, maybe Chinese, maybe Russian, maybe American, you know, maybe Pakistani, maybe Indian, maybe Hindustani, any history you go, I mean, man has done crimes to humanity that you would not even imagine. Do I want to be associated with that? Yes, my ancestors were part of it. Am I that man? So I need to find out what I am today. How do I benefit people today? How do I learn today? And the cycle of learning. You come to schools, universities and colleges to learn, get information. What do we do with this information? This is just data. And the most information someone has is Google. Google's got the most information. But what happens? When you put this information to work, it converts into knowledge. You become knowledgeable. You experiment with it. But then, it should not end there. How do you grow further? As soon as you get it, as soon as you understand, as soon as you know something, give it to people. They'll get you wisdom. You will get answers from the inside. Because that fear of, I know this, will go away. This fear, which you will always get. Because this paycheck, has bound us, made us a slave. I look at people and they're really, really upset. I think, what happened? Everything okay? Yeah, I lost my job. Like so. Still breathing, that means there's still work to be done. You're not dead yet. So what was going on when the paycheck was going on? Everything was fine. Fine. I don't know whether I'm going to walk out that door or not. How's my paycheck going to help me? How is that going to increase anything that I have? It is just a dependency. It takes you away from yourself and takes you away from God.
Going back to the question of identity formation, I would like you to now sum it up for us. Where do we go from here? What are the different strands of identity? The personal identity at a very, very personal level, religious, ethnic, racial, or the national identity? What needs to take precedence over what? What should be compromised for the larger benefit of everyone? How do we do that? What is it there that stops people taking this option of leaving the country? This is our country. We are who we are. We are Pakistanis. How do we start taking pride in that? How do we own who we are and what we are, and then deal with the future? Please.
I'm very proud to be Pakistani. But before that, I'm very proud to be human. This world, like I said before, I don't want to repeat myself again and again. But, we need to kind of accept and grow. God had plenty of space to put me on Mars and some on Jupiter and Mars or create another universe for each individual. No, He did not do that. He put us all on a small planet that was round. That means you're going to bump into each other again and again. So why? So that we benefit from each other. This is it. We're born to benefit from each other. Yes, we need to understand where we were born, but God did not make us Pakistani. God made us his best creation, his masterpiece. I'm an artist. You tell me to paint a painting and make it a mediocre painting and proudly sign my name on it, I won't do it. I won't do it. They're his masterpieces. This world and other worlds are for us to discover, learn, grow, and benefit each other. Pakistan Zindabad.
That means we're ready to start the round of questions. So I invite our guests here to please feel free to ask questions to our panelists. And I hope there is a mic here. Otherwise, we can pass it on. So, please.
Just a little perspective. I like the discussion first because one was giving a very logical and rational interpretation, the other was in a historical perspective and sticking to it till the end, and third giving a very structural and superfluous and flowing definition. My question is a bit crossing the boundaries. Would you like to compare Iran and the same problems facing Iran, Afghanistan and Pakistan? Because we have religion and a national identity in these three countries. We have extreme religion fever in Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and a bit of ethnic and other identities existing, coexisting. Secondly, is it right to say I'm Sindhi or I'm Punjabi and a Balochi?
This is the question I actually wanted to be elaborated on.
Yes.
You know, our personal identities, where do they stop? Where should they stop?
Where should they stop? Yeah. Because if you go outside Lahore, people hold on to their identities very strongly. They just believe we are Arai, we are Kambo, we are that Rajput, we are Vance. Vance is a Greek, by the way.
Who?
Vance is a. That's interesting. They're actually Greeks.
DNA.
They're claiming to be.
Yeah, so do a lot of and they got
But again, the
the
problem that we face here today is that should identity be used as a format to exclude everyone, to actually build barriers around ourselves, or should it help us to correlate with whoever is outside our boundary?
I ask you, what would be the basis, the reason for which we should have a merged, united identity? Are you suggesting the idea of a unified identity?
I'm not. I'm just trying to ask as to there are different layers to the concept of identity. There is the very personal identity, the gender identity, ethnic, racial, religious identity. How far do we carry on with that? And does it stop at some point and the national identity takes precedence? Should it not? Should it? What is your take on it? How do we go in the future as Pakistani, with an identity card saying Pakistani nationals? What does this mean to us?
The whole advantage of having a Pakistani identity is that we can do something with Pakistan. Obviously, the foreigners do a lot for us, but that is not the ideal, is it? We ourselves not doing enough for Pakistan. So what is it? This is, I think, quite obvious that the desired identity is a Pakistani identity. The question is, what will create that identity as a reality for the people who live in Pakistan?
So stop being Sindhi and Balochi and
By
Punjabi
stopping
and everything
to be
else.
Sindhi, you see, that certainly you're quite right that we will have to reject our pseudo-identities, if I may use the term. But what is it that will replace them? If you reject something, a priori, you have selected something. And it is for the reason of that selection that you need to reject what you are. I mean, I don't know if I'm making myself clear or not.
We're just trying to actually, we're not looking for definite answers here, but we're just trying to tease our brains and try and find some consensus somewhere that helps us go in the future.
No, I think we need to begin with the caste, clan, Punjabi, Sindhi, Baloch, Pathan, whatever we are, we have to stick very hard to that and then go on to being Pakistanis. Because only when we are informed about our reality can we extend that reality to being Pakistani. It's very essential, very important that we all be proud of what we are and know what we are. By the way, there's this joke when Cyrus Vance was something in the United States. I know a Vance, a friend who's a Vance. He said, "Oh, the ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਜੱਟ ਹੈਗਾ, ਸਾਡੇ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਗਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ." ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ.
So, on this question of what do we do with the Pakistani identity, and there have been suggestions, undercurrents amongst many of your remarks, implying, I think, much of what I've been saying, is that Pakistan is an unnatural construct. Pakistan is an unnatural state. All states are unnatural phenomena. The state is not a natural phenomenon. They are all constructs. So, so why do we have them? This comes down to politics, power, wealth. Who created the states? It was the rising new bourgeois class. They needed another basis for legitimizing their own rule in place of the old feudal order. And this came as a handy construct. The people. We are the people. So suddenly, so that's what all states are. As for the reality, sir, which both of you keep referring to, let me give you some news. The state is already a dodo. It's dead. It's no more. It's a thing of the past. The nation state is long gone. What has replaced it is global corporate capital. This recognizes no state boundaries. This is the new power. And as for identities that we seek to be other than what we are, the strongest pull is that of power. We all wanna be Yankee Americans wearing jeans, because that's the current superpower. Maybe tomorrow we'll all want to be Chinese. So it's a question of who do we aspire to? Power is an extremely attractive force, and it's this desire. So it's a question of where you place yourself in relation to the world in which we are, the bodies in which we are. I don't even identify with my body, my DNA. They keep changing so rapidly. Every 6 years I'm a wholly 100% new body. How can I identify with that? But that's what I am at this moment. I'm placed in this body, in this room, in this territory, and I've got to make the best of that. The question is, what are my goals in life? What do I want out of this life? If I put my goals in this world on in this material world, then I get into the rat race for power, wealth, territory, possessions. That's what I want, because this is the only life I've got, and I've got to make the best of this life. So you decide where you are, what is this world, who you are, decide on your goals and objectives, and then go for it.
I think to conclude this, I would say yes, we should find our historic backgrounds, but understand, at least I say to myself, that's not my identity. That is my background. That is my history. That's where I belong. That's where I came from. But today I'm a new man. New breath given to me today. If my research of my ancestral background helps me become a better man today, I should definitely do it. But what it does is gives me a false identity of me better than someone else. I think I should forget it. And I should start living. And, you know, everyone has a tainted past nobody talks about. So, whatever good we know about us might be the truth, might be a lie. Regardless of that, my truth is today. Like Mohtam Abi said, hey, this is it. This is the time that you have now. Let's unite. Unite ourselves first with ourselves. 99 attributes of God that have been given to us, and then said He's in our chest. So find out about these 99 powers that lie in your chest. Which ones are you using? Which ones you're abusing? Which ones you don't even know about? So find out. It's a beautiful life. You know, this breath is an amazing gift. You know, we've become really, really smart. So we start thinking a lot. We start feeling less. Don't feel anymore. Choose words wisely. Miss you too, love you too. All the time we say that. Do we have that feeling, the sinking heart, the butterflies in the stomach? No. We bring our feelings back. Because that is living. That is life. Accumulating data to prove yourself that you're better than the others is not. What makes you you is how you utilize yourself to benefit others and unite people. Thank you.
Questions,
I'd like us to say that identity also has a lot to do with parents and perception, and I was not expecting the four panelists to say what they said, and it's sort of just the first gentleman, I at first glance would not have even sort of thought he could speak English, and you know he's very good shot in a very traditional way, and yet his views and his English is so superb, and he's such a high achiever. The second gentleman is so ethnic, but looks very colonial. And I see Pakistan, and I'm sort of seeing what the Pakistan parents like my grandfather, my father would wear clothes like he does and behave like he does. And then we have a designer who's talking about religion and constantly bringing us towards God and wants to be international, but looks most desi out of everyone. So I'm just sort of confused at all of this, that you're all heading in so many different directions, saying something different with your parents, and so I think I'm more confused than where I started. But I think in terms of the Pakistani identity that we were saying, the designer has really reached international fame for Pakistan with his designing with the Sherwani for Matrix, the movie. And so how does that make you sort of, you haven't sort of touched upon your designing and what you've done for Pakistan in terms of identity. Everyone says कि जो matrix audition वाली शादी में पहननी है. Please, if you could talk about that and how the world has reacted to you being a Pakistani and being so famous.
What I'd say.
Wait for the mic.
If you look different than the others, people will notice you. People will turn around and comment. So, like you said, आपने मुझे देखा, आपने बोले कोई मिठाई के डब्बे में से केक निकला है. And everyone was like this. So, but the thing is, you need to, your reaction will change how people think about you. I was at London airport a while back, a couple of years ago, and when I travel, my patka is bigger than this. There's an AC ki hawa aati hai, I get a headache. So I wear this big patka, and we were gone for a show, and on the plane, all the models, everyone was my best friends. As soon as we landed in the immigration line, nobody wanted to stand with me. Obviously, this man would be stopped, and if he stopped, when naraz ho gayi, then there'll be more questions asked. So as soon as I got near her, she was just staring at me. She was like, she could not understand there's a lot of fabric coming to her. So she looked at me and she said, do you need a translator? And I looked back to her, I was like, yes I do if you don't understand English. And all she did was laugh. And that was it. We broke that initial kind of thing. If I would have said, you want me to show you my degrees? I couldn't have thought that. Their perception was different. I need to understand that. I need to accept it. I need to understand it myself so I'm comfortable. And we have to tell it to people in a way that they understand also. We can't fight. We've tried fighting. It hasn't helped. It's divided us further. We have to unite. And if through my clothes I can unite people, yes, I will. I absolutely thoroughly enjoy what I wear. And I was not allowed to go into restaurants, before, dressing like this. And I kept on dressing like this. That it became my little identity. My own father, when we'd go for weddings or something, he'd like, oh, dur chal, log samjhenge beta. He was my father. Like, I don't want anyone to know you look like this. And he always told me, he's like, don't you feel kind of embarrassed? You people look at you. I said, I just see through it. I was like, do you think Mother Teresa was a beautiful looking female? We saw through her. She was all just beauty. Do you think Edi Saab is a physically beautiful person? I mean, he is, but in general terms, how we've been brainwashed and taught. He's a beautiful man, we see through it. I hope I answered that question. Conclusion which company? Any questions?
Is that necessary to stand? Because
No.
Okay, thank you. One question and one discussion, and 4 different opinions, or might be 50 others. So I would like to say that's what we are, diverse. We are not born to be conformist, carbon copy of each other's, and that's what we are. But the question is that at the same time we have to cooperate with each other. So how, while cooperating with each other, we have to be ourselves and not to be carbon copies of each other? Because when there won't be any awareness about it, creativity dies, Al-Pakistan comes in, connection with the philosophy dies, and we are told lies. That is the question.
Great question again. To me, it boils down to saying, yes, we have our differences. We need to understand those differences. And whatever our learning is every day, for me, my guideline is, am I learning? And from my learning, people benefit. That is it. And ultimately uniting. So for me, I don't want to get into much confusion because it confuses me further. I just want to live a simple and a very fulfilling life. That every second I'm learning and people are benefiting. That has been my been my journey. And that will be my journey. But in that, a lot of times what happens is like, this is the way that I have become, just through solitude, sitting alone. But then what happens is sometimes when someone else comes out with a different idea, it kind of hurts your ego. It's like, that is where I need to be most aware, where my ego comes and where reality is. So if you keep that in check, I think you're so cool.
From your discussion, I gathered that the human identity, the identity to be a human, is the most important, and from that come subsets of that identity, like ethnic identity. So what you're saying is that we should go towards a human unity and stuff. So how can we use our ethnic identity, supposing the way you dress, to reach that union with someone who's so different from us?
Let's take the question.
मेरा सलमान साहब से सर आपने इसने कहा कि यू आर हिंदू सर हम सब लोग उस लिहाज से आपकी मगर आप देखिए ना कुछ ऐड भी होगी हमारी आइडेंटिटी में वी आर मुस्लिम्स नाउ क्या अगर हम उसको भी अपनी आइडेंटिटी में क्या आप ऐड करेंगे अपने हिंदू के साथ जो आपकी रिलीजन की हमारी इस सारे एरिया में एक एडिशन होगी क्या इसको भी आप ऐड करेंगे या ये दिस इज डिफरेंट थिंग
Let's take another question and then come back.
Sir, my question is that one of the honorable speaker described about the fact that all the people bind with the checks like pay and money. So why not such activities like social innovation and we bind them with money?
Please carry on.
First question is for you. I think my job is to try and simplify issues, and now this again is one that is cropping up again and again, the question of the unified identity versus the diversity. Again, we need to understand the difference. In what are we essentially? Essentially, we are human. And this is an identity that unites all of us. When we realize that you are human, I am human, then you are no other. We are one. But this essence is not a tangible, visible, concrete entity. What we see, the zahir, the outward, the apparent, these are the manifestations of the same essential reality. And the manifestations are infinite. Alhamdulillah. Thank God for that.
आपने मेरी बात शायद उस वक्त गौर से नहीं सुनी मैंने कहा था कि I am a Hindu and this has no religious connotation. देखिए हिंदू तो सिंधु की फारसी तलफ़्ज़ है सिर्फ ठीक है और हिंदुस्तान वो है जहाँ सिंधु या हिंदू दरिया बहता है ये जो बना दिया कि नहीं वो हिंदुइज्म या हिंदू मत ये मत हमें अब आके आई है ये पहले ही नहीं था उनके पास हिंदू मत का कोई लफ्ज़ नहीं है अपने मज़हब के लिए वो सनातन धर्म कहते हैं कदीम मज़हब अपने मज़हब को हिंदुइज्म तो ये तो नई कॉनोटेशन है बिल्कुल नया इख्तरा है बिल्कुल ये कोई मजहबी रंग नहीं था तो जो अगर मैं अपने आप को हिंदू कहता हूँ तो मैं इसलिए कहता हूँ कि मैं सिंधु या हिंदू दरिया का बच्चा हूँ बस
Exactly what his point was. It was geographical, not religious. So understand that connotation also. And secondly, yes, we are humans, so first it has to be on a human level. But these races, these colors, these languages, these countries, help us identify ourselves, that what we were and what we are becoming. It helps us unite to our roots. It would help us, go back, to the humanistic things of how man or how people did things. Yeah, for you to find. These are steps that you go up on this ladder to find yourself. So it's a self-awareness thing. Do not be threatened by it. And do not be overly, extraordinarily proud of it that, you are better than someone else. No. We all been told stories, They were these heroes and the ancestors were these heroes. We've all heard those stories. Every race, every religion, nobody's going to say कि वो बहुत डरपोक थे भाग गए हमारे दादा. Nobody's going to say that. Everyone's going to glorify. So please understand that, and understand that these races, these religions, these languages were made so that we could identify each other and understand ourselves.
We need to wrap up now. I thank my panelists very profoundly on behalf of you and myself. Thank you very much for being here. It was a pleasure to talk to you, to listen to your thoughts on identity formation. And as someone just said, they were as diverse as we are. And the basic thing is, and the primary thing is that we need to take pride in that. We need to accept each other. We need to work with each other. Our personal identities, our personal differences should actually be superseded by our identity as a human being. So our insaniyat should actually come to the fore for us to bridge all gaps and bridge all differences. With that, I thank you again and thank you very much.